Hey everybody, Jack Farmer here with the Wrestling Chatter, and today I had the opportunity to chat with Al Snow, and we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. We talked about Netflix, The Wrestlers, which of course is that great documentary you can see streaming right now, as well as what it's like to train wrestlers over at OVW Academy. We talk about Al Snow's comic book and so much more. You're not going to miss it. Check it out. This is the Wrestling Chatter's interview with Al Snow. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Wrestling Chatter. I'm Jack Farmer, being joined by none other than the legendary Al Snow. And Al, I'm glad you're taking the time to chat with us. And for people who don't follow you on Twitter, I'm just going to
Yeah,
jump right in. I hope this is okay. I'm a
yeah.
big fan of your Twitter account, and it's
Oh,
full
thank
of
you.
good comments and one-liners and jokes. You're a funny person. I have to before we get into the wrestling stuff, which everyone's here for. Are you a comedy fan? Are you a stand-up
Oh,
comedy fan?
I love stand-up comedy, and I love when I grew up, a lot of the old comedy movies with, and this is how old I am, with the Marx Brothers. They would still play those on TV.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Sid Caesar and Gene
Yeah.
Coca, and Your Show of Shows, and I've always loved comedy. I've always really was a huge Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin fan. Um, uh, uh, a lot of people are probably like, who is he talking about?
I get you, yeah.
Then back in the days when Saturday Night Live was really good, I would always watch that as well. So, a lot of different comedy. Loved stand-up comedy. Loved Richard Pryor. Eddie Murphy was amazing. At one point, I was a big Gallagher fan. So
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say you have your tweets, at least in my opinion, definitely have a Rodney Dangerfield kind of vibe to
Oh,
them,
I
almost
love.
a
He was fun too. Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
was comedy, is that ever something you wanted to get into?
I have recently done several, stand-up comedy dates, and they've went well. Nobody's thrown any fruits or vegetables at me while I'm on the stage yet. So,
Yeah.
I think it's probably because it'd be hard to pick up the wheelchair and throw them at me. But anyways,
Yeah. See, there you go. There's the comedy we're talking about right there. Yeah. I'm a big Norm Macdonald guy. So
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He's very funny too.
um so again, anyone who's not following you on Twitter, I recommend it. You're a lot of good stuff on there. But the
Oh,
reason
thank
I,
you.
I also wanted to bring up comedy is
Yeah.
obviously pro wrestling. It
Okay.
is what we're talking about today. And I feel like all entertainment, when I'm watching it, feels like there's little bits of pro wrestling in it. And I think it's because wrestling really combines every form of entertainment when done right. You got all of it in there. And this is my transition into a different kind of entertainment that I don't think a lot of people immediately think of when they think of pro wrestling. Well, maybe some of them do, but video games. I saw
Yeah.
recently that there was a big announcement, Hyper Focus Games, OVW. They're going to have some DLC for some on Ultra Pro Wrestling for OVW stuff, some
Yeah.
championships, the arena, the music. Talk to me a bit about this situation. How did it happen? And what people can expect, what your thoughts are on it?
Well, I was approached by the company, for myself. There are a lot of other, friends of mine, Blue Meanie, I believe Nova, a lot, BWO, etc. A lot of guys that are going to be featured in the game as DLC, downloadable content, and they had been speaking to me about that, and then they had the idea, the interest in including and featuring OVW as an arena and as part of the game itself. All thanks to, of course, the exposure and the relevancy of Netflix and the documentary Wrestlers. And,
Mm-hmm.
we were like, yeah, by all means. I mean, it would just is a great opportunity to it's a great opportunity to expand our exposure and awareness, and to be a part of, something that, it's going to last for a long time. Every time I get one of these types of projects, an action figure, video game, etc. I'm so honored and flattered because it's a little piece of immortality for me. You know, there are people
Hmm.
that still come up and talk to me about the uh, what is the SmackDown game for Nintendo. Uh,
But
you
depending
know,
on how far back you go, probably WrestleMania 2000 or
I think somewhere
No
around in there.
Mercy.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was that. It was one of
Yeah.
those, and how enjoyable. You know, how much they enjoyed the game. And,
Hmm.
when Head was an actual playable character in the game. So,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. They still remark about that, and it's these things have taken on a whole new bend for me even now, more so because I've 7 grandchildren. I mean, they just keep breeding like rabbits, and and for them to now to get to see and something I can leave behind, long after I'm gone. So, it's just cool. It's really cool.
Do you play the games at all, or is that not your
I
wheelhouse?
love to. I have a bit of an obsessive personality,
Yeah.
uh, and I have a tendency if I get something I really enjoy, like I'll literally sit there until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I won't go to the bathroom. I won't eat. I'll just keep playing. I'll be just just one more, one more level, one more level. And so I kind of have to not do it because if I get hooked on one, then I'll forgo. I've got too much going on that I can't, you know, uh, I can't just sit in the bedroom and play video
Yeah.
games for hours at a time. I'd love to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's awesome, but
I'm the same way. I always say, why can't they make more games that are easy to get in and out of, where I can play a
yeah,
little bit and then hop right back out instead of let the
but you get
world
so
pass me
caught
by?
up, and especially with the technology and the immersion, the graphics and everything. And especially if you get one that's really well done as far as a storyline,
Yes.
and that you really want to just keep seeing your way through to the next point. And yeah, it gets a little bit much sometimes.
Well, we definitely are going to talk about the wrestlers, but before jumping off video games, now you've got me hooked. You talk about the storyline. Real quick, favorite game that you've played?
Well, recently, again, and that's been a while,
Yeah.
and was where I really started to go, ooh, I need to be careful about this. Was BioShock. Those
Nice.
all those titles, I really was like so engrossed in those. So
Well, one of the things I love about the video games is it helps to broaden the audience too. Me growing up, a lot of my friends, I was able to get them into pro wrestling because I would get them to play the video game, and then they'd fall in love with those characters. I'm like, did you know you could watch these characters on TV and you could see more of them? And I think that as I'm watching the wrestlers, right, or
mhm.
wrestlers,
Yes.
on Netflix. It is such a cool way for people who are not fans to watch
Hmm.
wrestling and to enjoy it. And I can't tell you how many of my friends and family who are not wrestling fans were like, "Hey, did you watch Wrestlers? It's really good." And I was like, "Yeah, it is. Did you know you can watch them every Thursday on OVW? You can continue their journey." And I look at things like Total Divas, got a lot of people interested in pro wrestling, and even in other things like The Ultimate Fighter got a lot of people into MMA.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you that thinks that maybe these kind of documentaries like the wrestlers or like wrestlers is, which is again fantastic. I recommend anyone who hasn't seen it on Netflix check it out. Is this the future of pro wrestling? You think we're going to see a lot more of this kind of stuff?
Well, I'm sure you'll probably see different projects. That these are wrestlers isn't the original one. I mean, it doesn't, it goes all
Mm-hmm.
the way back to Tough Enough, and showing another side, a little more insight into professional wrestling. I was always so proud of it because um, it was a great infomercial for professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And even you brought up Ultimate Fighter. Dana White, when that came out, that was key. That was absolutely instrumental in the success and the growth of UFC. And through that vehicle of allowing an audience to relate to who the fighters were. And that's so is absolutely essentially important in you know, things such as, ultimate fighting, the MMA, professional wrestling, even more so, because as a fan, as a viewer, you're watching a sport or a pseudo sport, be whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing things physically that you don't relate to, That's why I always explain that baseball and football and basketball attract enormous audiences because every single person in the United States has played baseball or football or basketball, even if you've only done it in your backyard or went out in your driveway or in the street. You've played baseball at some point in your life.
Hmm.
You know, that's why hockey has a larger audience in Canada than it does in the United States. That's why soccer is immensely huge all over the rest of the world. And it's finally now starting to catch up because we have generations of children that have played soccer as kids that, now we're getting professional soccer teams finally here in the United States. We have interest in the World Cup of Soccer. And to
Hmm.
prove my point further, the top three televised sporting events of the world are number one is the World Cup of Soccer because clearly,
Hmm.
but the one that most people are surprised by, the second is the World Cup of Cricket,
Hmm.
and the third is the World Cup of Rugby. And those are the sports around the rest of the world that are predominantly and most prevalently played by the majority of the population. Therefore, there's a direct correlation and relationship to what in relatability to what you're seeing when you're watching that take place in MMA, in even boxing, and
Hmm.
especially in professional wrestling. An audience is not going to relate physically to what we do. They think that ring's a trampoline or a mattress. And let me tell you something. Unfortunately, it's not. And they cannot appreciate the physicality, but they can appreciate, and what really will drive their interest is who that fighter is, and now just what's at stake. What's the consequence? Why is there a need to see the resolution to this conflict? And UFC and wrestlers and Tough Enough and British Boot, all those things allow an audience to identify with that in a very intimate way. And I think it broadens and deepens the respect and appreciation that an existing wrestling fan holds for it or other vehicles as well. And I think it only increases the awareness and potentially draws people that otherwise would not have any interest at all into it, and you know allows us to build even more of a new audience.
Yeah, you talk about the invested interest, and something wrestlers does really good is it gives people an insight into who a lot of the wrestlers are and why they should care about them and their personalities. Do you think, now that you've had a chance to watch it back, do you think that you were portrayed fairly? You seem like I said I watch you on or look at you on Twitter. You
Uh,
make me laugh. You were very serious on the show. Is this a? Do you feel like you were portrayed accurately on wrestlers?
yeah, I mean, I was I had a conversation with Greg Whiteley and his crew, and made it very clear that look, when you come in here, you film, I'm not gonna do or be or say or act any differently than I would if you weren't here. I have too
Mhm.
much of a responsibility to both the company and to talent, especially the talent, to navigate the ship. Not to mention, I have a responsibility in the world of professional wrestling. They're going to leave. I still have to live in the world. I've got to go to a convention and see guys that are my peers.
Mhm.
Literally after the first week it had aired, I'd had to go to a convention in Pennsylvania. There's Rikishi was there, Ron Simmons, D'Lo, Godfather, uh, Shane Douglas, and I've got them coming up, and thank God, oh man, we saw it, we love it, and that's one of the biggest thrills for me is that everyone that has seen it in the wrestling world, the wrestlers themselves have come up and have complimented me and have nothing but positive things to say. It would have killed me, would have crushed me to, if they would have not liked it or felt like it did a disservice to the business or disrespected it uh, or didn't enhance it in some way.
When you were first pitched this idea, now I've watched some of your interviews and I know sort of the genesis of how it came about, but just internally, when they first came to you with this idea, hey, Al, we're going to do this show, we're going to record everything. What was your first like immediate gut reaction? Were you like, this is a great exposure opportunity? Were you like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this? Like, what was that just first thought?
I was torn, very reticent, uh, contrary to popular belief. Uh, you know, Everybody claims they want to go backstage. No, you
Hmm.
don't. You don't want to go backstage. Backstage sucks. That's not where the magic's at. But you absolutely desperately feel like you need to be. And I liken it to the Wizard of Oz. And in this, I had a conversation with Greg Whiteley, and I explained my thoughts on this. And I said, I'm trusting you and hoping that I understand you have to pull the curtain back, and that's fine. We all basically as a group in OVW agreed, staff, employees, talent, that we're either going to commit and we're going to be totally open, or we're not going to do it. You can't be half pregnant, so you're
Hmm.
either in all the way or you're not. Uh, so I had to really trust that he knew what he was doing and the way he did it, because in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is in the real world and it's all black and white and it's dreary it's fine. But then she gets transported to Oz and it's all color, it's all magic, it's all possible. Till you get to the end of the movie and you find out that they pull the curtain back and it's some little old man sitting there pushing buttons and twisting knobs and yanking chains. And now it goes back to black and white. The magic's gone. It's not fun
Hmm.
anymore. And that's always been a concern of mine, with professional wrestling. I get condemned for it, and I get told that I'm wrong uh, about it all the time. But I still hold very true to the fact of never give the audience something other than what you've already sold them. So if
Mm.
I've sold you a particular personality, a particular persona, that I need to be that person in public. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, if not, then because we just had this conversation, the one thing you really wanted to know and identify with was who these people were. That was essential. Well, now, if you can't believe in who they are, how are you ever going to believe in what they do or what they say?
Right.
So it makes it more difficult, more of a challenge to believe them when they're one person at one point, and then yet completely an opposite person at another point. So you can't
Right.
believe in them, and you can't buy into who they are. So you know, luckily, I think, because kind of what I do is I kind of watch who the wrestlers that are in OVW are, like who they don't even realize their aspects of their personalities. And then I simply direct them to turn that aspect of their personality up when they go to the ring. So the guy you saw go in the ring is kind of, to a degree, but just a muted down version of that same guy backstage.
Hmm.
And that allowed you throughout to always get the same person that you were sold. So, when they went to the wrestlers' houses and the families and regular life, it was still, to a degree, that same person that was going out there to that ring that you saw on the screen.
And I think that translates pretty well because, at least from what I was able to tell, what we were seeing on wrestlers was similar to what we would be getting on the TV show for a lot of these characters, but we get to see so much of how difficult the journey is. And I think we take for granted as viewers sometimes just how difficult that journey is to become a pro wrestler. Was there anything when you watch back on the wrestlers? And again, I recommend everyone check it out on Netflix. Anything that shocked you that maybe you saw during this when you were watching one of these people, what Haley J or Pectacular or whoever that you saw and went, "Oh my goodness, that I didn't know that was going on," or was there anything
Oh
shocking to you
yeah,
about
like
this?
yeah, like Haley smoking pot all the time, and it's like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I was not aware it was that rampant and that bad, and I had to, you know, I can only keep track of people so much,
Hmm.
and always have these conversations on a regular basis. Look, I don't care what you do. Means I don't judge anybody for doing anything on their time in
Hmm.
the safety, privacy, and security of their own home. Do what you want.
Right.
When you get to the parking lot in the arena, that's where our time begins. So let's stop doing everything else and focus on, and it's been she's gotten better about it. Doesn't do it anymore, but
Uh,
thank God.
yeah, like I said, it's just a great show for getting to know who these people are. I feel like I'm rooting for all of them now, and I hope they all have a ton of success. I want to talk to you about the school though, and OVW
Sure.
Academy, and uh, it's not like people just show up to OVW and are put on TV. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And the thing that I found interesting about OVW is that your school, unlike any other wrestling trained school, is accredited.
Hmm.
So I want you to talk to me just briefly about the accreditation and what about the accreditation specifically has made your school different from before and after accreditation, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, we're not yet accredited. In order to be accredited, you have to be a part of an educational organization. I don't know
Okay.
why, but there are educational organizations that will give accreditation to a trade school, vocational school, etc.
Mm-hmm.
The just like beauty college, barber school, massage school, in order for that they get certified. So you get certified by the state office proprietary education. There's one of those, and they oversee all secondary education from trade schools to vocational schools to universities and colleges. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to first get certification from them as a designated as a trade school, and then you can go to an educational organization, and that's where you can receive your accreditation, and that's where you can take credits that you've earned in different schools across state lines to other schools that maybe teach in that same vernacular or trade, and that can be applied into that school. Um, uh, we're the first that ever been certified as a trade school. It took probably myself and my partner Chad Miller. It took us probably 3 years of a lot of work and a lot of investment of time and money to get that certification. Um, the reason that we wanted to do it was twofold. Um, and really, the motivation. This might be a bit of a long answer, so I'll try to shorten it up.
Yeah.
uh, how I ended up, buying OVW in 2018 as a part owner was by meeting Chad Miller, who at the time was the executive director of the Kentucky Boxing Wrestling Commission. And I was approaching different wrestling commissions trying to institute standards
Mm-hmm.
for being a professional wrestler, learning the trade of being a professional wrestler. Um, and I was getting very frustrated. I was motivated because a young man in Oklahoma had wrestled on an independent show, was poorly trained, not trained much at all, took like a spine buster, I guess, struck the back of his head and was in a coma for weeks. And his father was forced to pull the plug and he died. And I
Oh
just
no.
found it, absurd in my own experiences of looking around the locker room and seeing people that were now professional wrestlers that not just aesthetically and cosmetically as far as being in shape, but really just not realizing the length and the degree of true athletic conditioning you need to be in to safely and respectfully perform the art of professional wrestling. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people assume, it's just fake and anybody can do it, and that could be not further from the truth. It takes a high level of training and conditioning and athleticism to really do it properly, and that's not there. And my own wife, who is a licensed masseuse here, a therapeutic masseuse, she had to attend a state accredited uh, college or training trade school. She had to be taught by a state accredited teacher. She had to complete a number of state required hours of training. Then she had to have a certain number of residency hours before she could even take a test to get a license to then pursue the trade of being a masseuse. Anywhere in this country that has a commission, some of them you don't even have to take a physical,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them you have to take a physical, and you pay your money, you've got a license. That's it. There are
Right.
no standards. And I find that insulting, you know, and I find it absurd. And it just lessens and belittles the real effort and work that it takes to be a professional wrestler on any level, true professional. So, one thing led to another. We bought OVW, and then the goal was to raise those standards, raise the standards of training, raise the standards of education, true education, not just training athletes, young men and women to perform in the ring, but also teaching them all of the aspects of the wrestling business. Uh,
Hmm.
camera operation, lighting, sound, editing, event management, financial management. I teach a history class, to give background in professional wrestling and give an appreciation for what they have. Um,
Hmm.
with the idea that it's not a matter of when or if, it's a matter of when your in-ring career is going to come to an end.
Hmm.
And if you have those other skills, for one, during your in-ring career, now if you know what a cameraman's looking for because you've ran a camera, you know better how to utilize that camera to its fullest degree so that you can capitalize on that and exploit it for any opportunity you may have on television. You have an appreciation for all of those unsung heroes that are setting up the stage, setting up the ring, setting up the lighting, setting up the sound, and you're not going to ever real think that you're bigger than the wrestling business because you've been there and you've had to do it. And if your career comes to an end inside the ring, you now have skills that you could go on and continue to contribute to wrestling and have a career backstage. Even potentially go into business for yourself. And Lord, don't do that. But becoming a promoter of a small wrestling company, you'd have to be out of your mind. And the two prime examples of that success were uh, uh, Tommaso Ciampa's lovely wife, Jessie Whitney. I met her on Tough Enough 2. She was attempting to win. She got, eliminated. She came back with MTV on Tough Enough 3, was a intern, and then was hired by WWE as a backstage producer, and then
Hmm.
went on to have a very successful career as a television producer all over the world with ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, doing all kinds of different projects. And then, another young man by the name of James Long, who came to OVW and trained to be a wrestler, taught himself lighting, cameras, sound, editing, was so very talented. I helped him get hired by Impact as a part of their production team, and then he got hired by WWE and is one of their top level, producers for WWE now, still to this day. So I see how much value there is in teaching these skills and to these athletes, and again, really just raising the standards of, I've always viewed professional wrestling not as like everybody else thinks, like it's a dojo or it's a training, a
Hmm.
gym. It's not. It's a place of education because
Hmm.
you're being taught skills that allow you to pursue a vocation that will allow you to create a career and have opportunities to, make a living on a level that most people could only imagine and have a potential to see the world, all because you're learning those skills to apply that trade of being a professional wrestler. And that's completely different than if you were going for mixed martial arts or karate or boxing or, this is, you're being taught those things purposely, no different than you would be being taught skills at a trade school to pursue being a beautician or a mortician or a barber or a licensed massage therapist. You'd be doing the exact same things. So why not treat it as such?
I absolutely agree, and I think that that's like you said, you can take those skills other places as well. Uh, After this show has aired, after Wrestlers has aired, obviously the visibility of OVW has gone up, and I'm assuming that the wrestlers that want to be a part of OVW and learn these things that you guys are teaching has probably gone up quite a bit as well.
Really.
Are you are you recruiting a lot of people? Are a lot of people coming to you? Is it the same? Has it changed anything? How has
It's about
wrestlers
the same.
impacted you from the wrestler standpoint?
Yeah, it's about the same, quite honestly.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. You know, even prior to wrestlers, it was something that's always befuddled me because, one of the biggest things for a wrestler is to have a platform to get exposure. That's the whole purpose of television. I've explained this numerous times. I argue with Vince Russo constantly because he doesn't seem to understand it. That a professional wrestling television show is not a television show. It's a commercial to sell a
Hmm.
product, and the product are the wrestlers. And without the wrestlers having access to that television show, they don't have a platform to sell their product, and then therefore become of value within the wrestling business by becoming an attraction to draw an audience, which is the objective by everything that you do. And is the measuring stick of the real measuring stick of your success in the wrestling business is how much of an attraction are you?
Hmm.
And surprisingly, like with because we have a very good reach as far as exposure is concerned for a young wrestler who's wanting to learn the ways and stuff. We're on Triller, which reaches 6-7 million wrestling fans around the world. We're locally we're on 3 or 4 different broadcast channels that go out throughout the regional area. Um, like 6 or 7 different national networks that are both broadcast, cable, and streaming that reach over 100 million plus homes from Canada down to Puerto Rico, Bahamas, Guam, and Virgin Islands. So if you're wanting exposure, this would be the place to come, whether it was when Netflix was here or not. But especially since Netflix is here, I would imagine that we would see just people rushing at the door. But you don't. You really don't. And
Really?
I don't know why. I really don't. We're outside of WWE and AEW. I think it's pretty safe to say we're, I think, the only company that does live weekly television. You
Hmm.
know, uh, where else are you going to get that kind of exposure or that kind of experience? I don't know. Uh,
Hmm.
you'd think with the spotlight that the docu series put on us that all eyes would be looking this way, and you'd want those eyes looking at you. You know, we I was expecting and thought we'd have a huge influx uh, talent wanting to beat the door down, and we have some that have, but not a tremendous amount.
That's very interesting. Well, I'd assume if you're a wrestler and if you're at least near that area, you should at least make the phone call because you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff. I see, and I want to be respectful of your time here, but I do want to make sure we talk about in a few weeks, March 30th. You guys have a big show coming up with NWA's World's Champion EC3 on it, and it's going to be in London, if I'm not mistaken. Uh,
We have some live. We've been starting to do more live events because I'm trying to build an actual territory
mhm,
for live regionally for live events. So we've got a big show in Nashville that's coming up in April 26th, I believe it is, that Friday night. We have we just did one in Indianapolis. We did one in Lexington. Um, excuse me, London, Kentucky. We're going to do a pay-per-view from the Pikeville Arena in Pikeville, Kentucky on August 31st. We're doing live television remotely, which we've done in the past, but we're going to
mhm.
do it again as a part of the 150th anniversary of the Kentucky Derby down at the Kentucky Derby Festival down by the Ohio River.
Oh, very cool.
July 11th, we have our 1300th consecutive episode of television, and we're
Ooh,
working on doing that live from a remote location in downtown Louisville, blocking off a street and doing it there. So we've done live. We went to it's an area of Louisville. It's for an entertainment district, and twice we did live television from remotely from what's called Fourth Street Live here in Louisville, um, and we drew probably each the first time probably around 2,500 people as an audience. The second time over 3,000. We did live television from Fort Knox and had an immense crowd there for the Army's 100th birthday. Uh, you know, and yeah, and but Nobody ever hear. I joke that I could walk out on television this Thursday night and kick a baby into the crowd. I could football punt a baby in the crowd on live TV, and no one would say a word about it. You know,
Yeah.
literally we had wrestlers come out, and Variety, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, People Magazine. The list goes on of nothing but just radiant, critiques. And the newsletters, not one said a word. Didn't report on it at all.
It's well, I mean, as long as you're getting the big guys like
Yeah,
Variety and
I don't.
stuff, that's
I
the
don't care. I don't care. It doesn't bother,
yeah.
I'm gonna just
Well,
keep doing what I'm gonna do anyways. But and probably football punting more babies out
yeah.
in the audience. So
Well, that could work. You never know. It's
yeah,
they tried that once, I think,
you got
somewhere
to
else.
make sure the laces are facing towards you. That
Yeah,
way.
it's a whole mess up if the laces are out.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's been
now,
different.
so again, I want to be respectful of your time. So just real quick, I'd love to have you chat about
Hmm.
Collar and Elbow
Yeah.
and your comic book with Tommy Dreamer.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I think I saw you're going to be going to Philly in
Yeah.
April. You're a busy person. You talk about platform and you being the product. You really are living that motto. Give me a little overview of all these other extracurriculars.
Well, the comic book publisher Eric Watkins, who owns Broken Icon Comics, had approached me a while back, um, and about writing a comic book. He was fascinated with the idea of the character, and he was talking about different scenarios. And I said, well, what if all these scenarios could be possible? Because he didn't want to do a wrestling comic book where it's very wrestling centric. It all takes place in arena, and it's true to the character, but it's in different environments. And I said, well, what if it's all happening upstairs in my mind anyways? It's not real. And he loved that. So he produced the first. It's called, the title's The Ballad of Al Snow and Head, with the premise being that I'm in a post-apocalyptic world, and I run a detective agency along with Head, and Pierre and Pepper are there too. And I overhear a bar wench who's claiming that a man stole her heart, meaning she's in love. I think she means he actually stole her heart, and I begin to go on the quest of solving the mystery and returning the heart to her. Um, and they're about that one. The ballads are about 40 pages long. So we have now, in this release, we'll have 3 issues of that. The second one is where I believe I'm an undercover secret agent and I'm infiltrating the enemy to the north, and that's Canada, where I think that's the Red Menace. And the third one is a horror book. And it's done, and all the artwork for each book is done amazing. These
Mhm.
are amazing artists and story writers that do work on these things. Uh, but this one's kind of in the Mike Nola style of
Mhm.
Hellboy, and it's a horror book. And I had at one time in WWE, I was flirting with the idea of different heads that represented different aspects of my personality. So there's the Help Me, which is both myself and the Head calling for assistance, medically.
Mhm.
There would be the Love Me head, and then the Hate Me head, and then the Fear Me head, which was this. It had a shaved. The Brood had given me a bloodbath, and so I brought the Fear Me head. Had one eye cut out, was black, and had electrical tape on its mouth, and had Fear Me written across it. And Vince didn't like that one, so he told me to get rid of it. So, um, but we have the team up ones, kind of like the old Marvel Spider-Man, or Brave and the Bold, Batman and Superman.
Mhm.
So I've done one team up already with Jesse Goddard's Mr. Spectacular, where it's set in a carnival, old 1930s carnival, and I control a bunch of little people all dressed like me from different characters I played, called the Swarm, and they attack people and cause chaos. And then the upcoming ones, we did a Western with Chavo Guerrero, where he's riding Pepe the
Oh,
Sick
nice.
Horse. And Tommy Dreamer is a Prohibition era story. It's a little more violent, a little darker. And then we've got one with Scotty Too Hottie It's like a modern day kind of John Wick kind of assassins team up. So
These all sound incredible. Like, if you're a comic book fan, it's got to be a dream come true for you being in
oh,
comic book.
it's man. I mean, how much greater can it get? I mean, I
Yeah.
love comic books, so now to have my very own, and like I said, like some of these people have wanted to work on this. A couple of the guys work on the Game of Thrones comic book. They work
Hmm.
on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They work for Marvel and DC, and like they literally put other projects aside because they wanted to work on this one. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then I get to do cool stuff. We're speaking of Game of Thrones. Ricky Steamboat. We're gonna do a team up with him, and it's gonna have dragons in it. All
Yeah.
that, of course. So
Very, yeah. I think anyone who's a fan of wrestling, 'cause obviously you and a lot of wrestlers are in it. Anyone who's a fan of comic books or just good reading, I think should definitely check those out as well. And
yeah.
man, just you're a busy guy. You're doing a bunch and so much stuff. Like I said, the collar and elbow
Oh, Collar and
merch
Elbow.
stuff is
Yeah,
great.
yep. You can go to collarandelbowbrand.com. They can check out all of the apparel there. They can use the code Snowman. They take 10% off of anything they order. Even if we have a sale, like it's 20, 30, 40% off, they take another additional 10% off of that. So this code always works. And we tried to create designs that you feel comfortable wearing anywhere. And if you're a wrestling fan and you see him, you're like, ah, yeah, that's cool. But if you're not a wrestling fan and you see the shirt, you're not going to walk up to somebody and go, hey, that wrestling, that's fake. And you're like, hey,
Right.
congratulations, Murder She Wrote. How long did it take for you to put the clues together?
Yeah. Thanks, Angela
Thanks.
Lansbury.
Yeah, thanks, Angela Lansbury. You're really cracking on that case. It only took you how many decades to find that out? Good
Well,
Lord.
yeah, I love all the designs there. Thank you, Al. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much
No,
for
thank
chatting with
you.
us. Let us know where the world can find you. And also, my last question is: are there any cameras hanging around for season 2 of Wrestlers?
Well, where they can find me on social media is at the real Al Snow. Because once in a while there have been some fakes. And listen, if you're going to fake me, I'm going to write you a message and go, look, aim the bar higher, for God's sake. I mean, going to fake being a celebrity, I'd be like George Clooney or Brad Pitt or
Right? Yeah.
something like that. If you're thinking, yeah, I'll slide in under the radar, nobody's going to notice I'm not Al Snow. So
Yeah.
they end up somehow doing it. So, but and if in season 2, we are quite honestly still keeping our fingers crossed. Netflix has right of first refusal, and they haven't said no, and they haven't said yes. I mean, we're just kind of playing the wait and see game. The process to even have this miraculous event happen was insane, and it was quite honestly, it was a one in a million shot, and it pulled together, and thank God we had such an incredible, talented crew and director like Greg Whiteley. I mean, he really is the secret ingredient to the sauce. The way he can envision and pull everything together and tell a story and make it so emotionally evocative is incredible. So I can't, it's my undying gratitude. That's for sure.
Well, again, I recommend everyone check it out. Wrestlers on Netflix, OVW, on Triller and YouTube and Facebook as well, I believe,
Yes,
every
yes,
Thursday,
yep,
as well as
live.
Collar and Elbow and live specifically, which is what's really cool about it. And also the comic book. I mean, really, I feel like throw a rock and you'll hit something Al Snow's working on.
Yeah,
But,
I got some action figures out there right now, and from Cello Toys, and got a few new ones coming out, and the video games, and then my book Self Help. It's on Amazon.com. If anybody wants to check it out there, they can. So
so very cool, Al. Thank you again so much for joining us. Appreciate it. I'm Jack Farmer with the Wrestling Chatter, and we'll see you all next time.